The lamp was still burning when I made the first mark. My wife was asleep or pretending to be. After that many years, you stop being able to tell the difference. And I sat at the foot of the bed with a small black book balanced on my knee, and I wrote down the date and beside it one word that no one outside that room would ever see. I had done it the morning after our wedding night. I would do it every morning after for the next 27 years. And in all that time, I never once asked myself whether it was right. That was the part I didn't understand yet. A man in my position wasn't supposed to ask. Before I go any further, let me tell you who's speaking. I grew up old order Amish, and I was raised to be the head of a household, to lead, to provide, to enforce. I'm not one of the women who left and told you what it was like to be ruled. I'm one of the men who did the ruling. And I'm telling you the part that almost never gets spoken, because the men who could speak it are the same men who were taught that speaking it is weakness. Most of what you've heard about this world comes from the women who left, and every word of it is true. But there's another side, the men who were handed the rules and told to enforce them. I was one of those men for 31 years, and the things I held the deepest, the things a man in my position was never permitted to say out loud, I couldn't fit into a video, so I wrote them down. A book called The Weight a Man is Given. The link is in the first comment and the description, and I'll tell you more before the end. For now, stay with me. Let me take you back to that first morning. I was 20 when I married. She was 18. The wedding had gone the way every wedding in our district went. Benches in my father's house, 4 hours of preaching, 300 people, roast chicken and gravy thick as paste, my face aching from a smile I didn't know how to stop wearing. And then the house emptied, and the lamps went low, and the two of us went upstairs as strangers who had been told we were now one flesh. What happened that night isn't the part I came here to tell you about. The women have told that part, and they told it true. The part nobody tells you is what a husband is expected to do when the sun comes up. Because there is a thing a man does the morning after, in my community, in the conservative districts especially. It isn't written in the Ordnung, there's no page you can point to, but every father teaches it to every son the same way mine taught it to me. Sideways in a sentence that sounds like it's about something else. The week before my wedding, my father took me out to the barn. He didn't look at me, he was oiling a harness, and he kept his hands moving the whole time, and he said, "A house has one head. The morning tells you whether the head is doing his job." That was all. I didn't understand it. I nodded like I did because a son who asks his father to explain that kind of thing has already failed the test. I understood it the morning after. I woke before her. I went downstairs. And I found, sitting on the kitchen table where my father had left it the night he brought it to the house, a small black book and a pencil. And I understood, the way you understand a thing in your body before your mind catches up, that I was meant to keep an account. Of her, of the household, of every place where the day fell short of what a godly home was supposed to be. That's what the morning after meant, not tenderness, not a quiet word over coffee, a ledger. I want you to understand that I didn't think of myself as a cruel man. I have to tell you that early, because everything I'm about to describe will sound like cruelty, and the most honest thing I can say is that it didn't feel like cruelty from the inside. It felt like duty, it felt like love, even. A man who keeps the account is a man who cares whether his house stays righteous. That's what I was taught. That's what I believed with my whole chest for the better part of 3 decades. So every morning before she woke, I made my mark. A word for the milk if it soured because she let it sit. A word for the dress that was a half-inch too short on our oldest girl. A word for the evening she'd spoken back to my mother at the table, soft as it was. A word for the Sunday she'd lingered too long talking with the masked woman after church. The one whose family was already half a step toward leaving. None of it was rage. I never raised my voice writing it down. That's what made it so easy to keep doing. It was quiet. It was orderly. It looked from the outside and from the inside exactly like a good man tending his home. And here's the thing no one warns you about when they hand you the authority. The account doesn't stay on the page. It gets into you. After a few years, I didn't need the book in front of me to keep the tally. I carried it. I watched her the way a man watches a field he isn't sure will come in. Every gesture, every word weighed against a standard she was never told the full shape of. She knew she was being measured. She never knew exactly by what. That not knowing was the whole machinery of it, and I ran that machinery every single day and called it the love of a faithful husband. Let me tell you about the first time I saw what it was doing. We were maybe 9 years married. We had 4 children by then, and one morning our second girl, who couldn't have been more than 5, did something small at the table. Knocked over her cup. Nothing. A child being a child. And I watched my wife's whole body go still. I watched her eyes go to me before they went to the child. Before she comforted her own daughter, she checked my face to see how much it was going to cost her. and the girl saw her mother do it. And the girl learned in that second the same thing her mother had learned on a wedding morning 9 years before, that the man at the head of the table is the weather, and you learn to read the weather before you do anything else. I didn't write anything down that morning. I sat there with my coffee going cold, and I felt something move in me that I didn't have a word for. And because I didn't have a word for it, I pushed it down. That's what a man in my position did with a feeling he couldn't name. He buried it, and he led. There's a part of this I can't get to here in the few minutes a video gives me. So I wrote it down instead, slowly, without the softening every algorithm asks for. It's the weight a man is given. 10 chapters, each one built around a single thing a man like me carries: an anvil, a black ledger, a lantern at the end of a lane, and what each one really costs the people I love. It's the confession of a man who held the authority and mistook the control for love. The link is in the first comment and the description. That's where the part I couldn't say out loud lives. I kept that ledger for 27 years. 27 years of mornings. Think about what that is. Think about a young woman, 18, who lay down on a wedding night not knowing what was coming and woke up the next day into a marriage where the first act of the day, every day, before the milking, before the prayers, was her husband quietly deciding where she had failed. She didn't know about the book for a long time. When she finally found it, and she did find it the way a wife eventually finds everything in a house she keeps, she didn't scream. She didn't cry where I could see. She just got very quiet for about a week, and then she handed it back to me closed and said one sentence. She said, "I always wondered what you were doing down there in the mornings." That was all. I always wondered what you were doing down there in the mornings. And then she went back to making breakfast. And I, God forgive me, felt relief that she hadn't made it harder. I didn't feel shame yet. The shame took years longer to arrive than it had any right to. Here's what I've come to understand, and I only understood it from the outside after a great deal that I'm not ready to lay out in a few minutes. The community didn't hand my father that ledger, and my father didn't hand it to me because anyone in it was evil. It came down the generations because it worked. It kept houses orderly, it kept women careful and men in charge, and the whole arrangement looking from a distance like peace. A man who questioned it was a man with pride in his heart, Hachmat, the worst sin we had a name for. So no man questioned it. The system protected itself by making the questioning the sin, and the silence around it. That was the real machinery. Not the book. The book was nothing, a few cents of paper. The silence was the thing. My wife couldn't ask me what I was writing. I couldn't have told her if she had. My father couldn't explain it to me in the barn. He could only point at it sideways and trust I'd feel the shape of it. The not saying was passed down more faithfully than the doing. We were a people who could build a barn together in a single day, 300 hands moving as one, and not one of us could say out loud what the man at the head of every one of those houses did before dawn. I don't tell you this to make you hate us. The Amish world gave me things I will carry to my grave, a community that came when the barn burned and asked for nothing, a faith that has been wounded and rebuilt but is still real, a way of working with my hands that has steadied me through every hard year. But there is no scripture that asks a man to keep a secret account of his wife's failings and call it headship. There is no God I can believe in now who handed a 20-year-old a black book and a pencil and called that the love of a husband. The morning I stopped was an ordinary morning. There was no lightning. Our youngest had married and gone. The house was quiet in a way it hadn't been in 30 years. And I came downstairs in the dark, and I reached for the book the way my hand had reached for it 10,000 times, and I stopped. And I sat down at the table where my second daughter had once knocked over a cup, and I held that book in both hands, and for the first time in 27 years, I read it back to myself from the beginning. Every word, every mark against a woman who had given me her whole life at 18 and never once been told the rules she was being graded by. I'm not going to tell you I burned it. That's the kind of ending people want, and the truth is smaller and harder. I put it in a drawer, and then I went and found my wife, who was awake, who had always been awake, I think, all those mornings. And I sat down across from her, and I said the thing my father never could, the thing the barn and the harness and the whole silent line of men behind me had never once let pass their lips. I said, I have been keeping count of you for 27 years, and I was wrong to, and I'm sorry. And she looked at me for a long time, and the clock ticked, and the horses shifted in the barn outside, and she said, I know I've been waiting a long time to hear you say it out loud. If you grew up in a house where someone was always keeping count, and you never knew the rules, and you learned to read another person's face before you let yourself feel anything, I see you. And if you were the one keeping count, if you were handed the authority and the book and told that the weight was love, I see you too, and I'm not here to tell you you were a monster. I'm here to tell you the weight was never yours to carry the way they said it was, and you are allowed, even now, even this late, to set it down and say so. If you want the rest, the full account, from a man still standing inside the thing he's describing, not at the end of it, it's all in The Weight a Man is Given. Links in the first comment and the description. 240 pages of what I was never allowed to set down anywhere else. Open the drawer with me. Until next time, light the fire, but don't forget to speak.